Hello and welcome to the NBA Live Preview Series presented by OTGBasketball.com. Make sure to follow OTG on Twitter at OTGBasketball. Also hit that subscribe button. I'm your host, Nick Fay. With me tonight, Kory Waldron, Matt Chin, and Kyrie specialist, Brett Carroll. What's up, fellas?
What's up, guys? How we feeling tonight?
It's almost there. We're almost there to the regular season. Excited to get into it.
Welcome to our land.
Yeah, here we are. We're talking Cleveland Cavaliers. They're coming in at number 2 in our rankings. Before we talk about the rankings, let's talk about this team from last season.
Obviously, they lost in the finals to the Warriors. Successful season other than that. What were your thoughts on this team from last year?
Guys, there are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and LeBron staying healthy through another entire season and postseason. I was very impressed with what they were able to do. Third in offensive efficiency, just an absolute offensive juggernaut. Looking at the numbers on synergy, they were first in isolation, 5th in transition offense, 3rd in half-court offense, 2nd in spot-up shooting. Just unbelievable offensive output from the Cavs last year. I mean, despite that, they thought it would be a good idea to acquire Darren Williams and Kyle Korver, who were offensively minded players. And I think that was ultimately what cost them in the finals. But Eastern Conference playoffs were basically preseason games for them. Up until the Eastern Conference finals, it was basically felt like a 1 versus 16 seed in March Madness every single game. And then when Isaiah Thomas went down, everyone knew that Boston didn't have a chance. So another typical LeBron season, and I was very impressed with everything they did top to bottom.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Offensively, this team can score with anybody, including the Warriors. Their problem last year was defensively. Too many 3 no D type players on their team. But like you said, cakewalk to the finals. Wasn't even close. They kind of gave one up in game, I think was 3 or 4 to the Celtics. And then, we all know what happened in the finals. But that like you said, that's what doomed them. A lot of offense, not enough defense, especially when you're going up against a team like the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, 3rd ranked in offensive rating, 21st in defensive rating. This team, obviously, offensively last year, like you guys mentioned, with the acquisitions of Kyle Korver, bringing in a guy like Darren Williams, firepower, and we'll talk about what they did in the offseason. I mean, this team is offensively, probably second to none, other than to the Golden State Warriors. All season, LeBron stayed healthy. Him and Kyrie did their things. I thought Kevin Love looked very good last year too. It was one of the first times he looked actually very fluid and comfortable within their offensive schemes. It was just not enough.
Yeah, you guys mentioned how they had an easy ride to the finals. Do you think that affected the Cavs in any ways? Do you think going against harder competition in the Eastern Conference would have helped them, or at the end of the day, it didn't really matter?
Probably not. I think it didn't really matter. This is a veteran team that's been there before. I think it was actually to their advantage that they had kind of a cakewalk in the Eastern Conference playoffs. It's better to preserve LeBron's health, some of the older guys' health. It wasn't a team that needed kind of the extra motivation and the extra experience to prepare for the Warriors. They've been there before.
I think for the Cavaliers, the recipe the last 3 years has been perfect. Coast through the regular season, get an opponent in the first round that you can sweep, but will at least challenge you a little bit and get the competitive juices flowing. And we saw that last year, once again with the Pacers. They almost blew a couple of those games, and Paul George went off for a couple of those games, and it really helped them. And that's really what their mindset has been. Get a challenging first-round opponent that you can sweep, and use that as your catalyst to play the brand of basketball you need to play in the finals.
Man, I love when the Pacers get some love on the podcast unexpectedly. Never really expect the Pacers to pop up. When they do, it brings a smile to my face.
That's why I'm here, man.
They might have played them. I think they played them the closest out of anyone, to be honest. Top to
They
bottom
did
the
actually.
whole
If you
series.
look at the plus minus, I think
Yeah.
for that series, it was the tightest of any of them. With LeBron James, he's one of the few players in the league I know of that when there's regular season LeBron James, and there is a clear-cut difference between that LeBron and playoff LeBron James. So it really doesn't matter who they play in the first couple of rounds in the Eastern Conference, because no matter what, LeBron seems to do whatever he wants in the playoffs until the finals. The finals, obviously, we know his win-loss record is not the greatest, but from point A to point Z, all those times in between. I mean, LeBron just dominates. I don't think it really matters what the competition is around him. It's just the fact that you have the best player in the league.
Who would you say was the biggest reason who was the player that hurt the Cavs the most defensively? If you had to pick one guy that really hurt them in terms of their defensive ability, especially against the Warriors.
From a role player perspective, I thought it was Kyle Korver, just because when you play against the Warriors, you need a lot of really switchable wings, and that's who they were throwing out there. I mean, Kyle Korver's never been a defensive specialist. They should have known that going in when they acquired him. Obviously, he doesn't play a huge number of minutes, but he basically became unplayable toward the end of the series, and he was going through a little bit of streaky shooting. So to me, I thought Kyle Korver and Darren Williams were both huge liabilities.
For me, actually, I think it's the other way around. I think Shumpert really hurts them. The fact that he just cannot score and cannot shoot really hurt him. Last year, he shot really well in the regular season, and I think they thought that going into the finals, he was somebody they could count on, and it just wasn't there. And I think that really hurts him, because if he can shoot and stay on the floor offensively, that changes their defense a lot, because now they can move around and switch on defense and play around with their defense a little bit and play defense by committee with him in the lineup. But because he can't shoot, especially with him and Tristan on the floor together, it's just not a good – that's one of their lineups that really crippled them in the finals.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players that come to mind for this. I mean, Channing Frye couldn't even stay on – he only played one game in the finals after playing, almost every game of the first two rounds of the series. He became unplayable because he just can't keep up. Like you guys mentioned, Kyle Korver, I mean, shooting, what is the point of having him on the floor to a degree? I know when Darren Williams was on the floor, the Warriors had that there was a soundbite of something that, they fear in his eyes when he was on the floor, and they just kept attacking him. And it's funny, Nick, I know, because of the Brooklyn Net days, it brings you some kind of joy to see him struggle, I'm sure. For the most part, it was death by committee with that bench unit. You made a great point too about Iman Shumpert, Brett. Besides the defense he gives you, offensively, this was a guy, 2-3 years ago we thought could be a very gifted player in this league, and his offensive game has gotten worse over the years, not better.
Yeah, definitely a lot of issues with that bench unit. But let's talk highlights. What was the biggest highlight of the Cavs season last year?
From a player perspective, I thought it was LeBron's health. This guy never gets hurt. He was 27.8 minutes a game, crazy high usage rate as usual. He's up to 217 postseason games now, so that's like another 2.5 extra seasons of wear and tear on top of the nightly beating that he takes every single game. So the guy's an absolute machine. I thought that was the highlight from a player perspective. And then from a team perspective, turning the defense up in the playoffs. Back in the regular season, there were a ton of questions about whether this team could flip the switch in the playoffs. I was on that bandwagon, and I think that's part of the reason why the Raptors and the Celtics and the Wizards thought they might have been able to dethrone LeBron, but they nullified all those concerns that people had about them in the regular season by stepping up defensively in the postseason and really turning it up a notch.
Somebody mentioned it earlier, but for me, Kevin Love. Last year, obviously we're going to get into this later, with Kyrie being gone, but last year was the first time we saw that big three and thought, wow, this could really be something special. And it started with the fact that Kevin Love finally looked comfortable in that third peg role and was really becoming an offensive force for them, and an efficient force at that. Kyrie had a career high in some of his percentages and numbers and stuff like that. And LeBron is LeBron. We know what we're going to get from him. But Kevin Love really looked comfortable, and I think that was a huge difference in year three for that trio.
They're both really good picks because, LeBron James, you can't go wrong. I've said this numerous times. I still believe that this is the greatest basketball player to ever walk the planet to this point in time. And we get the privilege of watching him every year. But I'm going to roll with you too, Brett. I think Kevin Love was a big highlight. We're talking about a guy who is seemingly every year he's the odd man out if the Cavs want to make a trade. Let's trade Love to New York for Melo. Let's trade him to the Pacers for Paul George. It seems like every trade rumor Kevin Love's name was in. And even still, last year, he looked healthy. of weight. I mean, hats off to him in the whatever health program he's on or whatever routine he's got going on. He's slimmed down, and now we have talked of him possibly being a center next year.
Yeah, honestly, both great picks, guys. LeBron, I think he's just not human, and Kevin Love, he fit in really well offensively on the court, and then also, like you guys mentioned, from a chemistry perspective. But disappointment, what was the biggest disappointment for this team last year?
In the NBA, your team can really go only as far as your owner lets them go. And I think Dan Gilbert has proven to be an awful owner, particularly in the way that he handled the David Griffin firing. I didn't see a huge problem with Griffin. I thought he's been a pretty decent GM, adhered to all of LeBron's demands and added what he wanted. From a timing perspective, Griffin was fired June 19th, 3 days before the draft, 7 days after the season ended, and then they went June 19th to July 24th without a true GM. So it was kind of unclear who was making all the decisions during that period. They lowballed Chauncey Billups with a $1 million salary offer, which is way less than fair market value. And I think the mishandling of that GM search was a huge reason why they missed out on Paul George. They missed out on Jimmy Butler. Players were reportedly telling Jimmy Butler to avoid Cleveland because it was such a toxic situation. Dan Gilbert didn't consult LeBron James first. And I just thought the handling of the entire situation was really, really bad and something that set the Cavs back at the beginning of the offseason.
You're absolutely right. But also, I mean, let's be honest, they didn't win the finals. That was the goal. That was the end-all, be-all, and they couldn't get it done. Mostly was because of the personnel that they had on their team. Like I said before, they had 3 or D guys. They didn't have 3 and D guys like you need. So it all started from there. And then, like you said, with David Griffin and Chauncey Billups and everything else, it was just a botched summer, at least the beginning of it. And yeah, so for me, the disappointment starts and ends with the finals, because if you get that done, maybe we're not talking about some of this other extracurricular stuff that happened over the summer.
Great point on the owner fact. Dan Gilbert has certainly shown his incompetence at times. Letting a guy who's given you just 3 straight finals, team around LeBron, has been able to give LeBron every piece he needs to try and compete. Firing him before, not re-signing him before the draft, it's very poor taste. I'm sure that rubbed LeBron the wrong way. We'll see if it plays a factor into his future with the team. For me, my biggest disappointment is going to be Tristan Thompson. And it's not over the body of work of the season, but it's just for that one series you mentioned, Brett, the finals. This is why they gave him a max deal contract. This is why LeBron wanted him so badly, for moments like this. And we're talking about a guy who had 4 rebounds in game 1, 4 in game 2, 3 in game 3. And then, he had 10 in game 4, the actually only game they won, and then 8 in game 5. They needed a guy to rebound. The one deficiency the Warriors have is they don't have a lot of size down low. So you can beat them up at times rebounding-wise. And when your center, who's making max money, doesn't get it done, that's a huge liability. You couldn't even play Tristan Thompson on the floor at points in that final series.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like you guys mentioned, I think it kind of is almost correlated disappointments. Like you said, you're losing the finals, then all that mismanagement in the front office and the organizational standpoint. Dan Gilbert didn't do a good job, and players were trying to avoid Cleveland, and that really hurt them because, like you said, they could have ended up with a Paul George. Maybe they don't lose a Kyrie Irving. We'll see what happens. But let's talk ranking. Number 2 in our ranking. What are your thoughts on that? Too high, too low, fair?
Totally fair, in my opinion. Obviously, you can't put them ahead of the Warriors, and I think where Kawhi Leonard's injury is right now and some of the questions that the Spurs have with LaMarcus Aldridge, I wouldn't put them ahead of the Cavs. And the Rockets have a lot of players to incorporate, or they have Chris Paul to incorporate, so that's going to be a huge schematic change for them. So I think Cleveland right there at number 2 is a totally fair spot.
This is coming from one of the biggest LeBron fans in the world and one of the biggest LeBron apologists in the world. I'm saying this right now. He has no excuse if they don't win this year. Number 2 is exactly where they need to be. They have the second best team in the league. Is it perfect? No. Is it something that jumps off of you? No. But they added a lot of pieces that kind of filled in some of the gaps that they had last year. And where last year I thought they had no chance of winning, this year you have a chance. I'm not saying they will win. I'm not saying they should win. But this is the one time, if everybody stays healthy, I'll put my hands up and say, all right, LeBron, it's on you now. You got the team that's probably best suited to beat the Warriors that you've had in Cleveland. Get it done. Get it done. So number 2 is where they need to be.
I love almost everything you just said, Brett.
Fire. I liked it.
I'm not going to lie. This may be LeBron's best team ever assembled on paper.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know there's a couple teams in Miami that were extremely talented. Obviously, the one that won 22 games in a row, and obviously Wade was back then. But I mean, on paper, this team is deep. It may not be that it's got a ton of defensive presence, but it's just there's a lot of big name guys. And I know that kind of clouds the judgment probably a little bit, but there's a lot of depth, and I do like that. I don't know. There's still. This is definitely though the number 2 best team in the league.
Mm-hmm.
See, I kind of fall on the other side. I think there's still a lot of questions with this team, and we'll get into a lot of them. But before the season as it stands right now, I would take the Big 3 Heat team with Ray Allen before I took this team. I could look back on this next summer and say that that's a crazy statement, but I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about this team, because I have plenty of questions of how it's all going to work as a unit.
Well, you're right about that. My only thing is, the one thing I like about this team, the biggest question I had from last year's team is, like I said, the 3 or D guys, the guys that only do one thing. They added guys this offseason that could do a little bit more than that. They have other ball handlers. They have other guys that create offense for themselves or other players. Yeah, some of them are out of their prime and stuff like that, but they have the depth in areas that they really needed depth in. It's not perfect, like you said. It's not going to be great, but they have a whole season to get through it. They're going to coast through the Eastern Conference again. So, this for the first 100 games of their season, including the playoffs, they're going to be, figuring this thing out. So once they get to the finals, you hope that everything will be clicking in the right order. And like I said, I just think that they have enough pieces to get it done. I'm not saying they're better than the Warriors by any stretch, but I don't think, as long as health is on their side, I don't think they have an excuse if it is indeed Warriors and Cavs will get in the finals.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting team. Like you guys mentioned, they add a lot of pieces, but it is on paper. And I'm kind of leaning towards it with Matt a little bit. I could see some of the flaws in this roster, and I kind of want to see more. But I think going to the season at number 2, you have LeBron James. You're almost like guaranteed a trip to the finals. So I think 2 is safe now. Maybe by the end of the season that could change. But let's talk about some of those additions. They didn't have a draft pick. They were active draft night looking for trades and looking to get a first-round pick or late second-round pick or something like that, but nothing really came up. And then they made a big trade.
They didn't have a GM.
Yeah, they didn't have a GM. They just had the front office there. But trade-wise, they made a huge trade. Kyrie Irving obviously requested a trade. He asked to be traded. He had a few teams on his list. It really didn't look like anything was going to happen. And then all of a sudden, you hear Boston 4 hours later. You hear Kyrie Irving for Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, and then added later on was a second-round pick and the Nets pick this year. So what are your thoughts on this trade? We'll look at it from what the Cavs got first, and then we'll talk Kyrie a little bit later. So what do you like about what they got in this trade? Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, Nets pick, Ante Zizic. What are your thoughts?
Given where they were, the situation that they were in, it's publicly demanded trade from Kyrie. They were backed into a corner. I thought they did outstanding. I hated the rest of their offseason, but this trade was the best that they possibly could have gotten. It's better than the Miami package of Dragic and Winslow. It was better than any package that Denver or Phoenix could have put together. Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, Devin Booker, Josh Jackson, Andrew Wiggins, all those guys were publicly taken off the table in Kyrie trades. So, look, if you're the Cavs, do you want to trade with the Celtics, a team that you're competing with for an Eastern Conference championship? No, that's not your first priority. But what the Celtics had with a frontline player in Isaiah Thomas, an unbelievable 3 and D role player in Jay Crowder, something that that the Cavs have been lacking the last couple of years, and the key is obviously the Nets pick. There was no future asset that was going to appease the Cavs in that way. There was no one else who had that kind of leverage and that kind of arsenal to blow the Cavs away. And I think it helps them to hedge their bets. Isaiah is now – he'll be a free agent at the same time as LeBron. If this doesn't work out, they can just build around Zizic, some younger players, and the Nets pick and move forward with that. So I think it works out because you appease the fan base. You're still competitive for now with a player that was second team All-NBA last season, but you're also ensuring for the future in case LeBron does leave. And he's given no indication that he's definitely going to stay. So I was really impressed with what Koby Altman was able to bring back for Kyrie Irving.
This was the rarest of times where you could say to yourself, I think both teams came out well in this trade. We'll obviously talk about the Kyrie Irving situation later, but for the Cavs, like you said, you hit the nail on the head. This was the best offer they were going to get. It helps them in every facet of the game. It helps them now. It helps them in the future. Jay Crowder is an amazing piece to get. He's exactly the guy that they need. If you weren't going to get a Paul George or a Jimmy Butler, honestly, Jay Crowder is probably the best option out there besides those two guys, and they got him. I'm not going to disrespect Kai and say that he's a wash with Isaiah Thomas, but I think he's much better than Isaiah Thomas. But Isaiah Thomas is good enough when healthy that it works out basically in the same manner as Kyrie does. I think this completed the summer. Like you said before, when they made the moves earlier in this offseason, it was kind of okay, well, they're just adding pieces just to add pieces. But with this trade, this whole team came together, and then obviously getting Wade afterwards. I think it was an amazing trade for the Cavaliers. I did not think they were going to get what they wanted for Kyrie, but this is literally what they wanted. And it's good. And it was a good trade for them.
Yeah, we mentioned it on the Celtics podcast. It might have been you, Matt. You might have said that the Jay Crowder contract is one of the best ones in the league.
It is.
It's
three more years, and I think $7.5 $8 million.
Absolutely beautiful with the big three that they have out in Cleveland. Well, big two. Whoops, he's gone. But you get Jay Crowder on that friendly deal, a great 3-and-D player, maybe a wing defender that they didn't have because he can guard from 2 to 3 or 2 to 4. And then Isaiah Thomas, you're getting a guy, the little guy, a guy who can score. He's got a chip on his shoulder, probably more so than usual because of how it all ended in Boston. Unfortunately, we won't see him in laced up until January. But then they got some stability because they got a first-round draft pick from the Nets, which we assume will be very good.
I don't think it's going to be that good, but that's
well. Let's talk about the Nets pick. Obviously, the Celtics weren't willing to trade that pick for some time. I know Danny Ainge said he owed it to Hayward and Horford to make the move. What are your thoughts on the net pick? Do you think Ainge kind of thought maybe it has a little bit less value this year, and maybe I'll move it, or Kyrie's just the type of player that you need to pull the trigger on, and how the Cavs should kind of view this pick moving forward?
I think it was about opportunity. A player like Kyrie Irving does not come up every single day on the trade market. People need to look at this summer as a complete anomaly. Players who are of that caliber, that level, they come up every couple years. So I thought Danny Ainge saw an opportunity with Kyrie Irving, and he didn't want to part with the Nets pick overall. This is going to be an unbelievable draft, perhaps better than the other drafts where he did have Nets picks. But you look at what Brooklyn is doing, I think they're on the way up. They are playing really well so far in the preseason. I don't want to read too much into that, but some of the role players that they've gotten, I could see the Nets pick being closer to that 5-6 range than that 1-2 range, just because Brooklyn has zero incentive to tank. I think there are some other teams that really want to get into the draft and into the top 3, and Brooklyn doesn't care about that. They're really working on their development. So if I were Cleveland, until LeBron James tells me that he's staying past this season and I get a commitment, I'm not trading that pick for anything. I don't care if Paul George becomes available at the deadline. I don't care if DeMarcus Cousins becomes available at the deadline. I am holding on to that as an insurance policy in case you have to blow it up after this season.
I think that the Celtics knew what the Nets knew, and that the Nets are going to be pretty decent this year. I think a lot of people are sleeping on the Nets. I think that with a mix of the fact that literally everybody outside the top 5 in the East is tanking, I mean, I can name 5 or 6 teams in the East that we know for a fact is going to be worse than the Nets, and that's just in the East. I think the Nets could push for an A seed. I don't think they might not. They might not get it, but they'll push for it. Only because the East is that bad this year, and they're one of the few teams that have no incentives to tank, like you just mentioned. And I think that helped the Celtics move the pick. I think it was a mixture of both. A guy like Kyrie Irving doesn't come along very often, and I've mentioned this to Nick before. I think the Celtics looked at the Nets and what they did and said, you know what, we don't think this pick is as valuable as people think, and let's move it now before the rest of the league finds out what we know. And the Celtics would know more than anybody else because they would pay attention to what the Nets did in the offseason more than anybody else. For all the people that think that the Nets are going to be a top 3 worst team in the league, they're smoking something and they're not paying attention. The Nets are going to be a decent team. They're not going to be great by any stretch of the imagination, but they can push for the AFC. Don't be surprised.
We talked about it on the first podcast of this previous show. Me and Nick both said this is a team. The Nets are a team that can make said that they're going to be in that hunt. My thought on the draft pick is it's still a better draft pick no matter where the Nets finish than what the Cavs will have. It's still an added piece for the future, and you still get an Isaiah Thomas who you can throw max money out at the end of the day as well. So I think it was just an incentive. I don't disagree that I'm sure Danny Ainge knew that the pick wasn't going to be as good as this year's pick. I mean, if you just look at the moves they made for Alan Crabb and getting Damari Carroll, it's pretty obvious that they're in the right direction to Brooklyn Nets. So I do agree the pick won't be as good, but it will still be a decent pick, I think.
And there just wasn't an alternative. Like, where else are you going to find a pick? Maybe it's not bona fide number 1 like the Nets have been the past couple of years, but what, are you going to use the Heat pick, the Denver pick, Minnesota's pick? I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess the Lakers could have tried, but were the Lakers going to trade for Kyrie?
No, the Celtics have the Lakers pick.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess they could have went for the Lakers pick. That's true, but that's protected 2 through 5. So maybe they just wanted something that fully unprotected that was definitely going to vest this year.
True. Very true.
Yeah, and I think, like you mentioned, the East is going to be terrible. I think it would be best case scenario if the Nets maybe squeeze in at the 8th seed at some point. It would still probably be with like 30 wins in a terrible, under 500 team. But I also think one thing that made this trade make sense for the Celtics, and they're willing to pull the trigger, and, talking about the Celtics enough, but it kind of fit their timeline a little better. Kyrie's still pretty young where he'll be good when Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are good. And they still have the other guys that are good at the same time. But you guys mentioned, they're busy this offseason. They picked up Derrick Rose, Jeff Green, Jose Calderon, signed Seti Osman, and they picked up LeBron's guy, Dwayne Wade. Let's talk Dwayne Wade first. What are your thoughts on him signing with the Cavs? Can he really help this team and help them against the Warriors?
I hated it. I absolutely hated it. I thought I just don't understand the signing at all. I thought it was a move to appease LeBron. D-Wade is 28% career three-point shooter. He's not going to overnight turn into a spot-up shooter. The LeBron around 4 good shooters is a proven formula. And to me, J.R. Smith is a better shooter. He's a better defender than D-Wade at this point in their careers. And if you're going to have Isaiah Thomas running the point, you need someone who's at least a decent defender playing at that 2 spot. And I don't see how Isaiah and D-Wade can coexist. I think they're going to be historically awful together. There's just no way. Because, look, if you're the Cavs, you're not so secretly – your primary goal, and there's some secondary goals, your primary goal is to prepare for the Warriors. And I don't see how D-Wade in a drive and kick offense where LeBron has the highest usage is going to benefit and is going to thrive. I just don't think that he's at this point in his career, he can't run. He's not going to be a point guard. Last year when Rondo went down in the playoffs, Fred Hoiberg turned to Michael Carter-Williams and Isaiah Cannon before he went to Wade to run the point. And I've seen some stuff out there about how, D-Wade can run the point, if Derrick Rose doesn't work out. I don't buy into that at all. So I don't know. I mean, I think if D-Wade can, be okay being a spot-up shooter instead of getting the ball in the high post and facilitating from there and doing his typical flash moves, then, yeah, maybe it'll work. But to me, I'm on the contract-wise, paying him a minimum deal, it's great because D-Wade is still really talented. But to me, the fit on paper just doesn't make sense with the starting lineup, and he's going to demand a lot of minutes, and it's just going to take away from some other stuff that I think with J.R. Smith and Jay Crowder that they want to do.
I actually disagree.
I'm glad. I'm
going to put it like this. I fear D-Wade on this Cavs team more than I fear him on the Heat team, only because of the way I think they're going to use him. I don't think that they're going to give him heavy minutes. I don't think that they're going to demand a lot from him. I think what they're going to do is they're going to be smart about this, realize that he's 35, and he's not going to be your second best player like he was on the Heat. He's now going to be your third, maybe fourth best player on this team, and that changes everything. You get D-Wade, I don't care how old he is, D-Wade as your third or fourth best player or third or fourth best option on offense. That's a really good team. And I think they're going to use him in different ways. They might put Wade on the bench for a little bit and have him rock out with the second unit just to have that flow that way, and put JR in the starting lineup sometimes. They might go super duper small and have Wade play the 3 and put JR in at the 2 as well. They're gonna. I think Ty Lue is gonna be very, very creative with the way they use D Wade, and they're gonna mix and match with lineups to figure out what the best way is. You're right. He's not a good shooter. That's the one thing that does suck about this. But what they needed more than anything else, they have enough 3-point shooters. They needed somebody that could create offense for himself and other players, and D Wade can certainly still do that. We saw it last year. Is he the same guy that we all know and love? No. But again, on this team, he's not going to be asked to be that guy. If he can do that in the third or fourth option role, that's an amazing, amazing feat. And that's literally that's what makes the Warriors the Warriors. You got a guy like Andre Iguodala. That's what Wade's going to be for them. He's going to be their Andre Iguodala, obviously not on the defensive end, but on offense.
See, I just disagree. I just disagree with that because I think D Wade, the way he's played his entire career, it's high usage. Someone who's really ball dominant, and he played with 2 ball dominant players last year in Jimmy Butler and Rajon Rondo, and they all butted heads in the regular season. Now you add him to a team with LeBron and Isaiah and D Rose, who are 3 of the most ball dominant players in the NBA. Plus you got to add Kevin Love's touches. I don't see D Wade working in an off ball role other than the fact that he's still a pretty good cutter when he needs to be. I don't see enough usage rate for him to be productive.
Yeah, I mean that's a legit fear, but again, I just feel that one of the reasons why he signed with Cleveland, in my mind, is he knew that was a team that could go for finals, and he knew that this was a team that he didn't have to do everything for them to succeed. You're right. In Chicago, he still was looked upon as one of the primary guys. I just don't think he's going to be that guy in Cleveland with Isaiah Thomas, with Kevin Love. Like I said, he's really your fourth option on offense once everybody comes back and they have that chemistry going. And I think Wade as your fourth option that's probably the best fourth option in basketball. You can't give me a fourth option that's better, bad 3-point shooting or not. And like I said, they can use him in different ways if he wants to be on ball more. Like I said, coming off the bench, maybe some packages when LeBron's out, because that was another problem with them. When LeBron sat on the floor, they didn't have any offense going. That's when maybe you use him the most, when LeBron goes to the bench for a minute. That way you could sustain the offense. I just think this is Ty Lue's chance to show us what he's got as a coach and say, all right, Ty Lue, draw up some plays and draw up some lineups that can use these guys the way the Warriors use their guys. Mix and match different lineups that you have to account for that we will always have the advantage in. And that's what I think they're going to try to do. Whether it's successful or not, I don't know, but I think there's too many options for them not to be.
Kory, get your thoughts in here.
Yeah, I was sitting here waiting. Tap me in. So I hear both of your arguments. I'm sitting here just ingesting. I agree that the fit of Wade, Matt, is questionable. Used in. If Wade is a starter on this team, I don't like it. I don't like Wade as a starter on this team. But to your point, Brett, if you have Wade coming off the bench, say he's the facilitator of a second unit, and he's the fourth option offensively for this team. Well, off the bench, Dwayne Wade is your second, if not third option off the bench, behind either Derrick Rose or I'm not sure who else comes off the bench because this team has so much depth, and I'm not sure what direction Lou's going to take it with. But Wade off the bench, obviously at the age of 36, he's not a fantastic jump shot shooter. He hit majority of his threes last year in the beginning part of the season where he was cutting his throat and doing everything else to the crowd against the Celtics, actually, I believe. But playmaking wise, I think Wade has always been a little bit underrated, and I agree, Matt, with the point that Wade is a very ball dominant person compared to a LeBron James and Kevin Love. I mean, he's not ball dominant, but he needs his touches. Derrick Rose, ball dominant. Wade, ball dominant. We always have these concerns. Isaiah Thomas, ball dominant. We always have these concerns when ball dominant players team up. We have Melo and Westbrook over in OKC. And if we recall, just a short time ago, when Kevin Durant went to the Warriors, the saying going around was, "There's only one basketball." How are all these guys going to coexist? There is a lot of sacrificing that goes on in the NBA, and I'm not saying it will work perfectly in Cleveland, but Wade realizes that you are almost done in this league. You are 36 years old, and you are now a like you said, Brett, a third, fourth option, maybe even a fifth option, depending on how well Rose plays. There's a lot of realization. Like if the goal is to win a championship, then all of these ball dominant players will change and adapt their games. Because at the end of the day, the one person that needs the ball in his hand is the best player on this team, who is LeBron James.
I was just about to say that. I
think I would feel a lot better about the Dwayne Wade signing if he could shoot. If he was a great spot-up shooter, I think I'd feel a lot better. I'm unsure about how he's going to take that smaller role. We kind of know his relationship with LeBron, and that kind of leads to my next point. Do you think having Dwayne Wade and LeBron there is going to cause any chemistry issues or anything? We know Wade and Butler kind of did something in Chicago, and the young players weren't too happy about it, and we know how LeBron and Dwayne Wade have that deep relationship. Do you think it's going to hurt the Cavs' chemistry or help the Cavs' chemistry?
It's hard to get into Dwayne Wade's head because, look, he knows all of the factors that we just talked about that are at play here. If he's willing to take on 15 minutes a night and really run the second offense and be the primary guy on the second offense until Isaiah Thomas comes back, then fine. Then I think if those expectations are on the table, then it's going to be great. Because then if you do take him off the floor in crunch time for J.R. Smith or for Kyle Korver or for whoever, then LeBron won't feel obligated to stick up for his guy. And I think having Tyronn Lue actually really helps because for all the knocks on Tyronn Lue as a coach, I think he's a good players coach. I think part of the reason why they hired him over David Blatt and got rid of David Blatt is because he does a good job understanding his players. He meshes with them well. He listens to where they're coming from. And he's always kept a good, tight-knit locker room, despite the fact that drama seems to follow the Cavs everywhere. So I don't think it'll disrupt it as long as everyone's expectations are on the same page. Because if I'm the Cavs, I'm not taking away from optimizing J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver and Jay Crowder at the expense just so LeBron and Wade can get enough minutes together.
You're absolutely right. Everything I just said in the last segment only works if Wade came with the mindset of, I'm going to do what it takes to help this team win, and that is to be a mentor to the young guys and to be in a optionary role. Now, if he joined this team just to be buddy-buddy with LeBron James and for them to rekindle the Heat days, let me be the first to tell you, as someone who's heard a lot of stories about that Cleveland locker room, this will not be a good year for them. That's all I can say about that. But I do know for a fact if Wade comes there with the wrong mindset, and it becomes the LeBron and Wade show, that's not going to be a very happy locker room by January. I just think that I know Wade enough to know that he's a constant professional and wants to win. And I think he already showed that in Miami, where he took the backseat to LeBron. He cares more about winning than anything else. So I'm confident that he's coming in there with the right attitude to be a role player and to do what it takes to win, and not just to start the banana boat crew.
Yeah, I'm not even really sure if it's dependent on like Wade's attitude in this. It's more on LeBron.
True, very true.
If Wade's coming here, as we know, anywhere LeBron is, it's his team. And we saw the minute he went to Miami, there was maybe like half a season, the first season, you can say that there was not a complete cohesion between Wade and LeBron. But then after that, Wade clearly took that back seat to LeBron. And I think coming here, LeBron's not stupid. I would hate to think LeBron thinks Wade is coming in here and it's going to be like the Miami Heat days. This prime Wade at his, as his sidekick, as his Robin. I mean, who knows? I mean, I would think LeBron's smarter to know that a 36-year-old Wade is not your Robin anymore. But I mean, I could be wrong. I just think, it's one of those signings where there had to be such intense discussions beforehand where LeBron laid out like what we need you to do, like how I need you to be within this offense, within this team. And I just can't see any conversation that goes with LeBron saying, we're going to run it just like our Miami Heat days.
I just envision many scenarios where they have D-Wade out there and Ty Lue decides, we need more shooting. We're going to go to Kyle Korver. Or we need more defense. We're going to go to Amon Shumpert. Or we want to go with a 2-point guard lineup with Derrick Rose and Isaiah Thomas. And I'm just curious to see how D-Wade takes that because he's never been in that situation before. He realizes that he's, past his prime, but he's still a competitor. He's one of the best competitors we've had of this generation. So if he's willing to take a backseat role and really limit himself to 12, 15 minutes a game, 17 minutes a game, then I think it's going to work great. I just have a lot of questions about whether the competitive, fiery Dwayne Wade is going to do that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And mentioning another former All-Star, a guy that used to be the man, and now he's kind of had a tough career, Derrick Rose. What do you think Derrick Rose can bring to this team?
At the time, I liked the deal for Derrick Rose. I mean, it's a minimum contract. You're not going to find a more promising player who's still in his 20s who's signed to the minimum salary. So from a financial standpoint, it's pretty good. But for a lot of the same reasons, he's really ball dominant. He doesn't have a lot of catch and shoot ability. So the fit could be a little bit bizarre when LeBron's handling the rock. I mean, one of the best things about Kyrie Irving is that when he needed to, he could become a spot-up shooter and wait for those driving kick passes from LeBron. We've never seen that from Derrick Rose. But I think it's a great flyer to take on him at this point in his career. He can be in a veteran locker room where I don't think expectations for him are particularly high. He can start at the point guard spot until Isaiah Thomas comes back. And then on the second unit, I think he's light years ahead of Jose Calderon, light years ahead of Kay Felder. So I do think that there are some good benefits to Derrick Rose. I just wonder how he would fit at end of games when LeBron is running the show.
I really like the Derrick Rose signing. If you remember, this whole thing he kind of got signed right when the Kyrie news first started to break. So it was one of those things where did they do it because they knew they were going to get him, or did they want him as a backup? I think he's in a perfect position. He's got a chip on his shoulder. From everything I hear about Derrick Rose, he wants more than anything to prove that he can still be a good player in this league. He hates the fact that he's, this generation's Grant Hill and all this other stuff because of his injuries. So if he comes in with that mindset, I think he's going to play really well for them. How he's going to play off the ball scares me because unlike Wade, who has a championship and has proven that he knows how to be a team player, I don't know if Rose knows how to do that. Him and Isaiah Thomas are both going to have to learn. And they're going to have to learn quickly. With the ball in his hands, you're the one that's going to have to get in where you fit in. But if he can figure it out, I think he's a great addition to this team. I think if he could be, even if he's the guy last year in the Knicks who averaged 18 a game, that's going to be big for them. They're going to need that from him. And if he can provide that, I think it was a great signing for them at a minimal price. And I'm excited to see if he's going to figure that out because I'm rooting for him.
I mean, defensively, this could be a train wreck next year.
Absolutely.
For all intents and purposes. But I don't love Derrick Rose starting. A lineup where D Rose just comes off the bench all year. I know with Isaiah going down, you have to put someone in the point guard role. But LeBron's your point guard, so I would like to see. We'll talk about that when I have my lineup, my dream lineup. When we talk about that later. I mean, offensively, Rose can still get buckets. I have watched any preseason game so far for the Cavaliers. I mean, Rose has shown that. I mean, when he is healthy, the guy can still score between 15 and 20 points a night with ease. I don't, like you said, Brett and Matt. You know, this is a guy that was extremely ball dominant. You know, offensively, he's never been a kind of guy who's been able to shoot threes. He's not necessarily a great drive and dish kind of guy. He's very one-sided. You know, he drives to the basket. He plays at at 110 speed. He's got a decent mid-range pull-up jumper. He doesn't dunk much anymore. He's around the basket with up and unders. Off the bench though, you know, when you're going against the Warriors, you put in Derrick Rose. You know, that's an issue for the Warriors, having to have, you know, a one-time MVP who can still go out there and, you know, score 15 points in, you know, 20 minutes.
I think I probably would have liked the Derrick Rose signing a little bit more, or the Dwayne Wade signing if they only got one of the two.
I agree.
Because you don't need two of the guys that can just score and not shoot, especially when you have a LeBron. Yeah, they definitely needed to add a playmaker this offseason, someone who create for themselves. But I think the fact adding two of these guys that can't really shoot the three ball, at least they haven't done it this far in their career, I think could hurt them. And then if you have to run some type of unit with a Derrick Rose and a Dwayne Wade, you know, that's like a Chicago backcourt, you know, no spacing.
Or
so
defense.
I think that could be – or defense. Yeah, that too. And I think that's another issue with these two signings is defense. You know, they can maybe give them some more offensive punch and some more playmaking. But like we mentioned on last season, the Cavs were offensive juggernaut. They needed defensive guys. So I was kind of a little disappointed they didn't add more defense. They added Jeff Green, Jose Calderon. I mentioned Seti Ozyman. You know, these guys, Jeff Green's a guy. Every year it's like, you know, we expect a lot from Jeff Green. He just lets us down. So, I mean, do you guys think real quick, do you think he's going to do anything, or it's just going to be another letdown season for Jeff Green? He already had his annual poster dunk, so he's probably done for the year.
That was nice. I will say that was nice. He's such an enigma. Like, the theory of Jeff Green has always been great, but the results that he produces are always so puzzling. You should never really put too much public faith in Jeff Green, because when he gets that public faith, he underperforms. So if the Cavs don't ever publicly endorse him, then as a key rotation player, then I think he'll be fine. But I think this is Jeff Green's last chance, really. He's just disappointed too many fan bases.
Yeah, he's been on half of them already, so you're absolutely right about that. This is, again, I think this is one of those years where, as a LeBron apologist, I got to sit back and say, all right, LeBron, if you're the man we all say you are, you're going to be the one to finally tap the untapped potential of Jeff Green. Because if anybody can do it, it's LeBron.
Yeah.
So if he can do that, and if we can get the Jeff Green, as a Georgetown fan, my father loved watching in college, if he can get that Jeff Green, then again, this is a dangerous Cavs team. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna put my name out there for any position, because Jeff Green has burned me too many times to do that. And he doesn't. I don't deserve to get scorned again. All I'm gonna say is, LeBron, we need you, Meek. We need you.
I think Jeff Green has fooled almost 90% of the NBA, because I was the same way. I thought when he went to Orlando, I was like, oh, that's a good spot for him. When he went to OKC, I thought that was a good spot for him. You know, it seems like every time you hear his name, you think, oh, that's nice. Then you look at the stats, and then you watch him play, and you go, well, maybe I don't know as much as I think I know. But Jeff Green could be Derek Williams of 2018, no?
Yeah.
This could be a guy who we see next to LeBron James have those kind of posterizing dunks. I mean, for a while, Derek Williams looked really good last year. You know, probably the best he's looked in the NBA throughout his career. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Green plays some valuable regular season minutes. But, I mean, come playoff time, that's a guy who I doubt even sees the floor for more than 10 minutes.
The idea of Jeff Green is great, because he's super athletic. He plays the wing. He can switch a little bit on defense when he's engaged. He can space the floor a little bit. He attacks closeouts well. So, I mean, all of the ingredients are right there for Jeff Green. And I'm right there with you, Brett. If LeBron can't maximize it, then no one else can.
And also with that, like I said earlier before, this is on Ty Lue too, because I'm glad you mentioned Derek Williams, because Derek Williams was playing pretty well for the Cavs. Then he kind of just disappeared. And I didn't understand why, because I thought he was a guy that could help that team last year a lot. So the Cavs have they have a habit of doing that. They kind of play around with a guy for a little bit, and then they kind of say, all right, we're going to go back to what we were doing before. So I think they got to be patient with him, with Jeff Green. Let him get his feet wet. Let him figure this out and really work with him. I mean, Ty Lue, that's part of your job too. Develop the guys on your team. And if you think you can get the max out of Jeff Green, you owe it to yourself to stick with it and figure it out and give him enough time. Obviously, if it's not working, it's not working. But don't give him 10 games and then say, all right, we're pulling the hook on this. I want to see them really try to get him to figure this out. Like I said, the regular season means nothing to them. The playoffs mean nothing to them, probably until the Eastern Conference Finals. You have a long time to figure out if Jeff Green is going to be a guy that can work for you. I say use the time wisely.
Who do you think LeBron, we mentioned, he helps players get to a higher level. Who's he going to help more this season, a Jeff Green or a Derrick Rose? We know Derrick Rose is more talented, but who's LeBron going to help more ascend their game?
Oh, boy, that's a good question. I mean, it's a lot of how willing you are to let LeBron transform your game and put you in the right positions. I think Derrick Rose is hungry. I think his popularity was so high a couple of years ago, and the narrative on him has changed so much. And then being in an absolute dumpster fire in New York last season, I think the public opinion on him is pretty low. So I think just from a mentality standpoint, Derrick Rose seems like someone who should be willing to take on LeBron's advice and consulting.
This is hard for me, guys. Again, the world's biggest LeBron apologist. I think LeBron maximizes role players. He doesn't maximize stars or superstars. I think that was one of the things him and Kyrie Irving always butted heads on. So the answer has to be Jeff Green, because I don't think he's going to maximize Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose can maximize Derrick Rose, but I don't think what LeBron does is actually going to maximize what Derrick Rose does. What LeBron does could and should maximize what Jeff Green does. And if he does that, that's a success. And if Derrick Rose figures upon himself how to maximize his own talent in LeBron's team, that's a success. But it's two totally separate entities. That's the thing that scares me by Isaiah Thomas too. I mean, everybody's talking about how he's basically Kyrie, but he's on the ball. He needs the ball in his hands. He's going to have to play off the ball on this team. And we saw that didn't really work in Sacramento when they had, 20 point guards trying to share the ball there. So I don't know how that's going to work. I think this is going to have to be Derrick Rose. You got to figure out on your own how to play off the ball. LeBron's not going to teach you how to do that. You got to do that. And for Jeff Green, because you're more of an off-the-ball player, that's when LeBron can maximize what you do for this team. So I hate to say that as a LeBron guy, but I'm of the mindset that LeBron doesn't really maximize you if you're another good player. If anything, he hinders you. Ask Chris Bosh and Kevin Love.
That's a really good point on the hindering thing. And then you made a great point, Matt, about general his hunger after what he was to where he is. This is
I don't know if he is hungry. I just want him to be.
Well,
I think he is. He was training with LeBron a lot too.
Yeah, how does what's happened to him not give him a kick in the butt to change the narrative?
Yeah, I saw some kind of video. It was like a tribute video by a bunch of fans about Derrick Rose, and he started crying. I can't remember the exact.
It was in China, I think.
Yeah, and I don't want to misquote, but he had a lot of nice things to say about how he wants to give back to the fans, be able to play like he used to play. So I think there is a bit of an hunger. Sure, how much LeBron, like you said, Brett, I don't know how much LeBron can really help a guy like Derrick Rose. When you have that much talent, you're a star level guy. The ego is the biggest thing for Rose to overcome. It's not really LeBron helping him. It's more of him realizing his situation. I definitely think a guy like Jeff Green, I mean, LeBron talks to you. You just sit there, pull up a chair, grab a notepad, and just write down everything you hear. I mean, you really don't have a choice. I mean, I can't remember which one of you guys mentioned it. I mean, this could be one of his last destinations if it doesn't work out. So I think definitely Jeff Green could learn the most from being a teammate or adhere the most positives from playing with LeBron James.
Yeah, so well, that's always a storyline to keep on. Who's LeBron going to make better this season? But let's talk departures.
Nick, can I just touch quickly on someone you talked about? You mentioned Jose Calderon. I just don't understand how he fits into this roster or his purpose. Like, this team completely lacks young developmental players, and they could totally use a young developmental point guard, even if it's someone who only has like a 10% chance of becoming a good rotational player. Like, why isn't Jose Calderon's spot Kay Felder's spot? Or why didn't they use the same money on like Tony Allen, a defensive specialist? To me, Calderon is just the kind of player whose defensive weaknesses are going to get completely exposed in the playoffs, like the same way that Darren Williams were in a 7-game series. So I'm just confused, like, where Jose Calderon fits into this roster.
Well, to quickly
I think that was a
question,
stupid signing.
Yeah.
Well, to quickly answer your question, because I know we got to move on. Remember, they signed him before, like, in the mix of the Kyrie Irving thing. So I think that was more of, okay, in case we trade Kyrie and don't get a quality starting point guard in return, we need a backup point guard. Hence him and Derrick Rose. So I think that was the mindset. He might not even make the team once the summer rosters are cut.
I mean, my argument against that would be like, you could probably move a second-round pick for a better point guard than Jose Calderon, just because what can Calderon do at this point? Like, but enough about that hate. Let's talk departures. Let's talk about a really good point guard who left Cleveland. He asked for a trade, like we mentioned. Brett has some connection to him. Kyrie Irving. What are your thoughts on him leaving this team?
Brett, go first.
Go first. All right. Wait. Let me ask you a question. Are we talking like as a Cavs person or as his brother? It's two different.
Give us both.
Who was it?
As his brother, I'm extremely excited for him. I've talked to him a couple times. He's excited, and he's told me that just the culture itself is totally different from the two teams. So I think this is going to be great for him. It might potentially be great for the Cavs. It might take LeBron to another level, depending on how upset he is over this. I don't know. Only LeBron will know that. Like we said before, the trade they got back for him was as good as they possibly were going to get for him. So I think for the Cavs' perspective, this could be a blessing in disguise. Who knows? But I do know that Kyrie is really happy in Boston, and he's loving his new teammates, loving his new coach, and he's excited about the opportunity to go out there and just play basketball in a manner that he wants to play basketball.
Brett, are you actually related to Kyrie Irving?
Yeah, it's my best friend. Yeah. Well,
wow. All right, I didn't know that. Interesting. Okay, that's cool. I thought I said this on the Celtics preview pod. I give Kyrie a lot of credit for demanding the trade now instead of waiting until he's age 27, age 28 to demand the trade then, because I think with Brad Stevens, he has a lot of room to grow the next couple of years. And if he really wants to blaze his own path, I give him a lot of credit for that. Look, the overarching story with Kevin Durant is that people hate him for what he did, joining a super team, chasing rings, and stuff like that. If that's going to be the story on Kevin Durant, then shouldn't we credit Kyrie Irving for wanting to blaze his own path and do his own thing? And I know people would say like, oh, well, it's the Celtics and they already had great players and stuff. Well, Kyrie didn't get to choose where he wanted to go. I mean, Boston wasn't on his original 4 list. I mean, he said Miami, who was a team that didn't make the playoffs last year. He said New York, which is a team that's completely rebuilding. So I give Kyrie a ton of credit because it's not every day it's actually never happened before that I can remember where a second best player on a team demands a trade away from the greatest player in the game. I can't remember anything like that after 3 consecutive finals appearances.
Definitely the first time I've ever seen it. A player ready to up and leave consistent winning. We talk about a league that's generally driven by success. The only success higher for him last year would have been winning a title. And they won a title the year before off his jump shot, off the 3 over Stephen Curry. I mean, I understand it. And to your point, it's completely different, Matt, to the Kevin Durant scenario, 100%. He wants to be the guy. I don't think you can hold it against someone who's at his age. He's already won a title. You don't know what's going to happen with LeBron. And I mean, you can make the argument, well, if LeBron leaves, Kyrie could have been the man on Cleveland. Well, who knows?
Let me just say this. That's not why he wanted to leave. He said it on First Take, and it's the truth. I know, some people had a problem with his First Take interview, but his thing wasn't really about being the man or doing this or doing that. I tell people this all the time. When he first came into the league, people compared him to Chris Paul. They didn't compare him to Steve Francis. They didn't compare him to Stephon Marbury. They didn't compare him to all these other score-first point guards. Because he was on the Cavaliers for different situations, that's what he had to become. And he got to a point where he said, you know what, this is not who I am. This is not what I am. I want to go to a situation where I could be a point guard, where I don't have to go isolation every time and shoot every time and, average 25 points just to be successful for this team. I want to be able to run an offense and learn the game of basketball and grow as a person and as a point guard. And so, like you said before, Matt, he's extremely lucky that Boston was the team that raised their hand with the best bid for him, because now he's in a situation where he can do that and thrive. But yeah, I just want to point that out now. It's not about him wanting to be the man. It was about more of him trying to nurture his game and grow as a player. And if that means he's the number one option on the team, I'm sure he's not going to be upset about that either. So I just want to put that out there before But go ahead, Kory.
Well, if that's the case, then yeah, I mean, there's not a better scenario for him to be a point guard than on a team that he will be. The Celtics don't have a true facilitating guy now, since they're the complete roster turnover. He's definitely going to have the ball in his hands to facilitate for others, and if that's what he wants to do, if what you're saying is he wants to be the guy who is like a Chris Paul that can make, be the number one scoring option on that team every night, then it's absolutely perfect for him. I said on the Celtics podcast, I thought that he was going to continue to be that isolation basketball player, because that's how I've always perceived him as.
I'll say this as someone who covers the Celtics. I think when Isaiah Thomas first came to the Celtics, he was basically a scoring-only point guard. But Brad Stevens, with his spacing scheme, with his offensive play calls, with the dribble handoff, he got Isaiah in a lot of positions to utilize his playmaking skills and his passing skills. Isaiah became a pretty good drive and kick point guard. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's Chris Paul or anything like that, but I mean, can you ask for a better coach to kind of maximize all of your talent than Brad Stevens? I don't think he's going to completely abandon the isolation Kyrie, the razzle-dazzle dribble moves, because that's what makes Kyrie great. But at age 25, there's something that's yet to be uncovered with Kyrie's game, especially because he's been in Cleveland in a system that's completely built around LeBron and LeBron's needs. And now it's going to be, much more kind of even distributed with Brad Stevens. Brad Stevens isn't going to play favorites like that, like they have in Cleveland.
Absolutely. And let me also say this. Do not worry. We will still see the razzle-dazzle, as Iron Eagle would like to say.
Good.
We're going to see that part of his game, too. That's not going to go away. Let me give you some insider perspective. And this is how I used to tell him this his first 3 years in the league. I used to tell him, when I know you have 40 points, you didn't have a good game. And he would look at me like, what are you talking about? And what I thought made him great is I could sit there and watch a game, and you see him, he'll cross somebody over, he'll do a nice little, layup off the glass, he'll do this, he'll do that. But it comes in spurts. And you say to yourself, okay, he's having a good game. He's probably got, 12 to 15 points. And then you look at the scoreboard, he's got 30. And you're like, how the hell did he get 30? And that's what made him great. He was a facilitator, and he picked his spots. He was very highly efficient, knew how to score when it was needed, not necessarily every time down the court. And when he won his All-Star MVP game, it was the same way. He was doing that, and all the attention was on Melo, because they were force-feeding it to Melo to try to make the three-point record. And I said, you know what, he's probably got 15 to 20. And once again, he had 30. I said, how the hell did he get 30? And I was sitting with some of his high school teammates, and we all laughed because we said it's St. Pat's all over again, because that's what made him great. That's what made him a superstar in this league, in my opinion. Obviously, if you just look at his NBA career, it's been the opposite. But I think that's what he wants to do is go back to that time. And you know what? He's got 6 years of probably bad habits that he's going to have to kick. So it's probably going to take a little bit, especially if they're losing in games. You might see that ISO Kyrie that tries to take on 1-on-5 at first. But that's okay. I think that's going to be part of the growing pains. But I think that's why he wants to go to a team like Boston, because Boston is going to be able to get him out of those habits and get him back to playing basketball the way he likes to play basketball, which is survey the court, get guys involved. And then when it's time to score, we already know he's the original Mr. Fourth Quarter. No offense to Isaiah Thomas.
So why do you think Kyrie initially did not have Boston on his trade destination list? You know, he had New York, I think LA, Miami, San Antonio, Minnesota. Why do you think he chose those teams and didn't have Boston on his list?
Well, it's got to be because they already had a point guard. Look, to us now in retrospect, we say, well, okay, swapping Isaiah Thomas for Kyrie Irving, it's a great fit on paper for where Isaiah's contract is. But you look at some of those other teams, New York, Miami had Dragic, but he's significantly older than Isaiah Thomas. Minnesota, after trading Ricky Rubio. And then who's the last one? San Antonio, Tony Parker retiring. I think it's just he looked at where the needs were for point guards because if you're going to create a list, you might as well create one where there's an open path for you to be the starter, undoubtedly.
Yeah, that was part of it. And I think he also, leverage-wise for him, left some teams out. Because I know for a fact he's always liked Boston. He has ties to Boston. His dad played at BU. He was very excited when he found out Boston was the team. So I think also he's very smart. There were some teams he left off that list. I'm not going to get into them, but there's some other teams that he left off that list on purpose because he didn't want the Cavs to have all the leverage. So that was done on purpose.
How much do you guys read into the whole situation where David Griffin went on SportsCenter and dropped a bunch of names for coaches that Kyrie liked, and Brad Stevens was right after Greg Popovich? Was that something that may have been planted, kind of to give Danny Ainge a little bit of a signal that, hey, you should kind of look at Kyrie because that's a place where he might want to go?
I'm not sure. First of all, let me say D. Griff is the man. I like D. Griff a lot. They're going to miss him in Cleveland. I'm not sure how much of that was D. Griff trying to look out for the Celtics or look out for Kai, or maybe it was just something that he just figured made sense. I do know that Danny Ainge has always liked Kyrie. I know that for a fact.
Oh, yeah.
Ever since his rookie year when he hit that game-winning layup on Paul Pierce. So I think this might have been something that Danny Ainge would have been pursuing regardless to get a guy like Kyrie, because it's always been a guy on his radar. So I don't know if David Griffin did it on purpose, or maybe Ainge called him and said, hey, if you're going on ESPN, make sure to plug us in there and see what happens.
Just my conspiracy theory.
and it might be right. It might be right.
A week later, he got traded to Boston. So,
right. I never asked him about that. So that's a good point. I don't know.
But moving on from Kyrie, we could probably talk about him for a whole pod. Departure-wise, they also lost James Jones, Dante Jones, Darren Williams, Derek Williams. Are these guys going to be missed? You don't have to give me an explanation. Yes or no is cool.
Maybe just Derek Williams.
No, none of them.
Nah. None of these guys made a huge impact.
All right, let's talk starters on opening night. So we're assuming Isaiah Thomas is out because I believe he's not coming back to around January. So give me your starting lineup opening night for the Cavaliers.
What I would do is go with Derrick Rose, JR, LeBron, Crowder, and Love at the 5, moving Tristan Thompson to the bench. Offensively, moving Tristan to the bench opens up the floor. Obviously, that's a no-brainer on offense when you got 4 good shooters around LeBron. I mean, ultimately, I would replace Isaiah for Derrick Rose, and then you have 4 really good shooters. So I'd rather have Love at the 5, I guess, defensively. I mean, he's not going to be good defensively at the 4 or the 5, so I would rather have him taking charges, playing post defense rather than playing the 4, where sometimes he's chasing guys around screens or getting caught in switches that force him to defend around the perimeter. So I think that's the best lineup for them. And I think that's the best lineup to play actually against the Warriors if they make it that far against the Warriors death lineup.
I think what they're probably going to do, opening night, Rose at the 1, Wade at the 2. I think they're going to try to convince LeBron to play the 4. I think they're going to start Crowder at the 3, LeBron at the 4, Love at the 5. Um, that the one good thing is now that Tristan's gone, Wade's non-shooting doesn't hurt as much. So because of that, I think they're going to do that as a reason to put Wade in that starting lineup at first. We'll see if it works. I mean, Matt, I agree with you. In a perfect world, JR probably would start just so you have 4 shooters on the floor. But now that Tristan's on the bench, I think you can get away with Wade a little bit more.
Yeah, I think they roll with Rose, JR, Crowder, LeBron, and then Love to start. I would like to see a lineup where Rose and Wade both come off the bench.
Me too.
And because LeBron is your point guard anyways, so I would like to see a lineup where they have, J.R. Smith guarding a 1, Crowder on the floor, LeBron on the floor, Love on the floor, and then having for rebounding purposes Tristan Thompson. Because you can play a weird lineups because of the versatility of how, what Crowder can guard, what LeBron can guard. And J.R. Smith, for what it's worth, he's not like a fantastic defender, but he's actually an underrated defender to a degree. He's very, he's like a gnat fly. He's just always pestering you. So that would be like my dream lineup.
I'll say this about Isaiah Thomas, too. I mean, for all the stuff we've been talking about as him as a ball-dominant player, he did show in flashes last year that he can be a good off-ball kind of catch-and-shoot guy. When the Celtics ran their offense through Al Horford, when they played Isaiah with Marcus Smart, who when that was happening, Marcus Smart was running the offense and Isaiah was playing off ball a little bit. I believe that Isaiah Thomas can actually become more of an off-ball scorer, catch-and-shoot guy when LeBron is dominating the offense.
Yeah, I think IT could probably fit into that scoring role, like you said, off ball a little bit in those ISO situations. He'll kind of, be able to show off his skills. But moving on from there, what do you think? Who do you think is going to be the breakout starter in your starting lineup?
I don't think there is one, to be perfectly honest. I think we kind of know who these guys are. I mean, I'm very curious to see Kevin Love at the 5 spot this year. He's become basically just a glorified spot-up shooter the last couple of years, and I think with Thomas sidelined by the hip injury, maybe we see a little bit more of the Love post-ups where, last year he got a couple catches at the elbow each game, a couple low post catches, but maybe we see a lot more than that. And we see Love more in the Minnesota role and how they were using him there because there are a lot of shots to go around now that Kyrie's gone. And I think it's going to go to a little bit of everyone. And I'm very curious to see if Kevin Love can get back to his kind of double-double every single night days where he's just such a dominant low-post scorer, and maybe he does a little bit of facilitating out of the post and kicking it to players cross-court for corner threes, things like that.
For 3 years, I've been staring at my TV begging the Cavs to use Kevin Love more. And maybe, just maybe, they'll start using him more this year. You hit the nail on the head perfectly, Matt. I'm not even going to repeat what you said because you said everything perfectly. I just want him to use Love more, and he's the one guy that should be the breakout star. I said before, he looked comfortable in his role. If they could use him the same way they used him last year and then, extend the rope a little bit and have more plays called for him and use him, like you said, in that Minnesota Timberwolves Love role, I think this could be a very dangerous team. But they got to be willing to do it. And it starts with LeBron. It starts with T-Luke. It's up to those guys to be willing to do it. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree with not really a breakout guy, I don't think, on this Cavs starting 5. But I'm going to go with LeBron. Wins MVP this year. So for him to win MVP, he has to be playing at a level higher than what he played at last year and the year before, or last 3 years since he's won the MVP, or 4 years, whatever it's been. So I think LeBron's going to break out. I think, LeBron does have to do a little bit more. And I think, just from reading everything I've read, he's obsessed. He's in the gym all the time. He's working harder than he has recently. It just sounds like a guy who wants to come out and just dominate one more time and really make a push to win a title. And I think it's going to be one of the last times we see LeBron at peak form, and this will probably be his best attempt to win one more MVP.
I would agree with you if the mission wasn't to win a championship. With Kevin Durant winning and with Kyrie gone, you're right. He has every incentive to say, you know what, bump all y'all. I'm about to prove to y'all once and for all to stop trying to come for my crown, because until I retire, you're not getting it. But LeBron knows for him to be at his best and for the Cavs to be at his best, he's going to have to coast through the regular season. He can't risk injury or fatigue trying to win the MVP. He's got 4 of them. I think he's okay with – well, no, he's not okay with other guys winning it. But I think he's at a point of his career where he's like, you know what, I got my 4 out of 5. Probably should have been 5 out of 5. But I got my 4. I'm okay with it. And I'm going to let these other guys have it if they want it. Now, I'll tell you one thing. If Kyrie's starting to have an MVP season, just out of pettiness, we might see LeBron turn it up a notch just to make sure Kyrie doesn't get it. But other than that, I think he's going to let everybody else kill each other to try to win the MVP. And he's just going to coast and put up, damn near triple-double numbers like he does every year. And he'll, like you said before, he'll wait to the playoffs to remind everybody who's still the best player in the league.
Look, LeBron could win the MVP any year that he wanted to if he really wanted to go for it. And I actually find it very interesting that in this era, rest and kind of preserving your body is something that's prioritized by players, because if you look at the MVP races in the 80s and the 90s, those guys were laying it out on the floor every single night. I know Larry Bird and Magic Johnson. I've seen a lot of documentaries on them where they're just constantly thinking about the other one, and every single morning they both wake up and look at each other's box score in the newspaper. And it's just interesting to me that in this era, players have the foresight to know, like, well, it's all about championships, and I need to preserve myself for the playoffs.
Well, we as the media did that. I mean, we as the media made it where championships were end all be all. We as the media, I mean, I love Kobe to death, but if you look at the numbers, he's not a top 10 player, but because he has 5 rings, we assume he's the second best player to Michael Jordan. LeBron, same thing, because he's 3 out of 5 in the finals, he can never be better than Michael Jordan. Where if you look at some of the other things, you say, I don't know, LeBron might actually be a better basketball player than Michael Jordan. But we've created that. And because of that, LeBron knows his legacy is based on one thing, whether he gets that ring or not. So the MVPs mean nothing. He could win MVP from here to kingdom come. If he never wins another ring, he's gonna still be looked down upon. So he's not gonna do what it takes to win MVP. He's gonna do what he feels at least it takes to win another championship.
I don't think he's gonna. Like, I'm not saying that he's prioritizing an MVP by any means.
I know.
The most important thing is obviously winning a ring and boosting that Hall of Fame resume and the conversation against Jordan, which I think, like you mentioned, Matt, the Magic Johnson look at box scores. LeBron may not have a box score to look at, but he's looking at the resume of Michael Jordan more often than not. If I would feel, at least, because he has mentioned numerous times, I'm chasing the ghost, or so maybe the MVP doesn't mean a ton, but I think it's just this is like one of his last seasons. I think we're going to see the prime LeBron. I think from start to finish, he can still rest 10 games and win MVP. He can still rest, 12 games and win MVP. I think it's just going to be the games he plays. His impact will be more effective than not, because the point you made about him averaging damn near a triple-double, I wouldn't be surprised if he averages more triple-doubles than the last 3 years combined this year. I just think there's going to be a different kind of hunger of him. He may not play the 80s and 90s type basketball where he's diving on the floor every night and throwing his body in harm's way, but I just think he'll have more of an impact.
No, you're absolutely right. And to your point, he does look at the box score. He does that stuff too. Remember, when that whole thing started with Harden and Westbrook getting triple doubles every night, LeBron had a 5-game streak where he either had a triple double or was right there. So trust me, LeBron does that stuff too, and he's all about his brand and his legacy and reminding people, hold on, stop trying to act like there's another guy who's the baddest man on earth. It's still me. So he'll give you flashes of that and prove to you I could get a triple-double too in my sleep if I wanted to. I could do this too if I wanted to. it's really a reminder of, listen, I can win the MVP. I'm allowing you not. I'm allowing you peasants to take one because I don't want to do it. So, but you're right. He's going to have an MVP caliber year for sure. Now, the problem is with guys like Russell Westbrook and James Harden who never take a day off. I think you're wrong by he could rest 10 to 12 games and get it. That will hurt him. But I just think those guys are going to go so hard every night that the media is really going to gravitate towards them. And LeBron's kind of going to be in the back front. But right when he gets too far in the back front, he'll put a string together of a couple of weeks of dominant LeBron. Just to remind people, I ain't going nowhere. I'm still here. But that's just how he works now.
Yeah. Moving on from LeBron, we could probably talk about him for a long time. We got a few more things to touch on before we hit 2 hours. So let's talk breakout bench player. No explanation needed. Just who's breaking out on this bench. Who do you expect to have a big season?
No one. I mean, this team is chock full of veterans, so I can't in good heart pick someone to break out.
Yeah, I mean, if Wade comes off the bench, then I guess Wade. But after that, nobody.
I'm going to go with Tristan Thompson.
I'm not.
Coming off, I mean, they still need someone to rebound they still need a center. I mean, this is their center. I mean, there's not another center on the roster. So his impact is still important because you still need a big man in stretches in the NBA. And I think coming off last year and struggling, the Kardashian curse is looming. There's a baby on the way. There's something to prove for Tristan Thompson with everything that's happened between the NBA Finals of last year and now.
No, you're right. But I mean, for one, he's still with Chloe, so the Kardashian, if it's real, it's going to still hurt him this year. Two,
I think the bench role could help him as well because he's as a super rebounder, and that's what he's trying to do is just bring that energy. He'll be playing less minutes most likely, so maybe he can kind of give him more of a spark than what he did in the starting lineup. But talking wins, best case scenario for the Cavs.
1 seed, I think they do go through a little. They're not putting in a ton of effort every night, so I think best case scenario, 58 wins, 1 seed. They get another ring. IT comes back. He's an absolute beast. We forget about the hip injury, and LeBron resigns next summer.
Best case scenario, 1 seed with about 56 to 58 wins. Obviously, winning a championship. LeBron comes back. Isaiah comes back. Everybody's happy.
I think best case scenario, I'm going high, 61 wins.
No way.
The East is so weak. I'm sorry. They can cakewalk through. You can still not care and win. There's 6 teams in the East that are going to be below 500, way below 500.
Very true. But the way they cruise, their defense is going to be absolutely terrible in the regular season. So I just can't see 61 wins.
I mean, I could see high 50s. I think with the depth they had and the East being bad, they could really have a big season, but I don't think that's a priority. Give me a % chance they beat the Warriors in the finals. Just real quick, no explanation. What % do they have against Golden State if they meet in the finals again for the 4th time?
All things, best case scenario, IT is healthy, like 15, 20%.
I'm going to go 45-50. I think this team's good. They can do it.
17%.
12%. I'm all right, but I'm just really high on the Warriors. But worst case scenario, what do you think is the worst thing that could happen to the Cavs this season?
I think they could be sub 50 wins, but I don't think it's a reflection of how bad they would be. I just think they put it on cruise control and don't care about being a 4 seed or something like that, and then they just turn it on in the playoffs. And I guess worst case scenario, they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals to Washington or Boston, something like that.
Besides the obvious of LeBron getting hurt, not going to win. Worst case scenario.
He never gets hurt.
I know, but like I said, I'm not going to put that bad juju on me. So worst case scenario, I can't, even on cruise control, I can't see them being anything lower than a 3 seed. Honestly, worst case scenario, 3 seed and lose to Boston in the Eastern Conference playoff off a Kyrie Irving buzzer beater. That will be the worst case scenario for the Cavaliers.
Yeah, worst case scenario is, I think, right, sub 500, sub 50 wins is in the Eastern Conference Finals, and he doesn't make it to the finals.
Realistically, what do you expect to happen next year? What do you think is going to really happen to the Cavs?
I have them slotted for 54 wins, either a 1 or 2 seed. I don't think it really matters. This team has a ton of talent. And look, I've spent this entire podcast kind of hating on how their fit is, but their respective skill sets might not fit like a perfect puzzle piece, but they have the smartest basketball player in the world, and they're going to figure it out. They always figure it out. So I think Ty Lue's going to maintain a good environment, and I think they make it back to the NBA Finals again, and they put that pressure on LeBron to decide whether or not he wants to come back or if he wants to leave. I think he's going to ultimately leave because I think their owner is kind of a clown, and he has done what he needs to do for Cleveland. So even if they don't win a championship this year, I think he's already accomplished his goal there.
Realistically, I think they're going to win between 50 and 54 games. Whether that gives them a 1 or a 2 seed, I'm not sure. It doesn't really matter. Realistically, I think they're going to go to the finals and probably lose in about 6 games. I honestly don't think LeBron's going to leave for a number of reasons. I think the Western Conference is too good. Why would you want to go there and not have a free trip to the finals every year? And I think this whole Kyrie Irving thing kind of made him say, you know what, I'm going to stick with Cleveland just to be petty and make sure you make it to the finals until I'm done.
I love how there's always like these petty storylines, but like it's so true in the NBA. The pettiness is so real. I'm rolling with 56 wins as what they win.
Solid. I think, yeah, mid-50s is probably where it's going to be at for the Cavs. Percent chance that they don't make it to the finals.
Well, I think if Isaiah doesn't come back and he has the same issues that Johnny Flynn had with the same hip injury, and it's just LeBron and K-Love really running the show, then I think there's a chance they don't make it to the finals. I'll put it like 25-30%.
If everybody's healthy, it's very high. They don't wait. Yeah, it's very high they make it to the finals. But like you said, if Wade's hurt, if Rose is hurt, if Isaiah is hurt, here's the problem. Even if all that happens, the one guy the Celtics had that could guard LeBron is now on LeBron's team. So I don't know. I think it's. I'll say, if everybody is hurt, I'll give it about a 40% chance they miss the finals.
I'm going to say 10% chance that they miss the finals.
Oh, it's 0% if everybody's healthy. But, like I said, if people are hurt, then it changes the game a little bit.
Man, no love for Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving.
No. I have a lot of love for Kyrie Irving. We know that.
I know. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I think it's probably more like probably 15% chance. Maybe, it could get a little bit closer depending on. I think Isaiah Thomas is a really interesting thing. Coming back from a hip injury is not easy, especially when he's not going to have, a full time to do it. He got injured late in the playoffs, and he got a surgery really late too. So I'm just kind of concerned a little bit. Obviously, they added Jay Crowder defensively, but still there's some concern about their defense.
They have no one to guard Kyrie. I'll just put that out there. No one is sticking with Kyrie.
Oh, for sure. That's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, if you really look at it, who are they going to put? Like Derrick Rose? Like, that's a joke. What are they going to put? Dwayne Wade?
Shumpert's the only one who has a reasonable chance to do some things, but
and then how much do you really want
on the Knicks? So Shump also remembers when he was on the Knicks and Kyrie put him on the N1 mixtape to him. Yeah. So he don't want that life.
So, but it'll definitely be one of the most interesting storylines. Obviously, these teams open up against each other. But moving on from there, this is going to obviously be something we follow all year long, Kyrie versus LeBron. Let's talk the truth. And today, I got 2 sets of emojis for you. I got, obviously, the crown for LeBron because he's still the king of the NBA. I still think he's the best player in the league as of right now. And then I got a clock and a computer because this team could use a time machine. If they could turn back the clock for Dwayne Wade, Derrick Rose, they'd be good to go. And they might actually have a chance against the Warriors.
I'm going to go with the zipper mouth face emoji because the elephant in the room is LeBron James's contract. It controls the narrative of the entire NBA. No one is going to want to talk about it this entire season. LeBron hasn't taken any opportunity to deny the rumors about him and the Lakers. So I think that is the storyline that is going to follow this team the whole year.
Obviously, my emoji is going to be both the dollar sign for LeBron's contract and also that shamrock. Celtics Cavs rivalry is going to be a big thing for them.
So many good storylines.
Yeah, I'm going with the crown emoji, and it's all
King
around
me.
LeBron James.
King me, baby.
You know, I'm they weren't the 1 seed last year. It doesn't really matter. I don't put stock in any of this bull crap, but this is the best team in the East, and I think they remain the best team. LeBron gets them as the 1 seed. They cruise through the Eastern Conference. They maybe lose 1 or 2 games to Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. They make the finals. LeBron wins MVP. They beat the Warriors, but they probably take the Warriors to 5 games, maybe 6, and they lose. But, yeah, it's going to be a season where we really get to appreciate LeBron while this backstretch of his career begins.
What team is LeBron going to be on? Quickly, everyone. Next,
that's what I was going to next question before we get to League Pass.
I'm going last because I said it.
Cleveland.
Oh damn! I haven't really put any thought into this.
I'm gonna tell you right now, there's no way he's going to Lakers. Trust me on this.
No, Lakers. I've shot that down so many times. I don't know, maybe Houston. Maybe he wants to play with Chris Paul, and I don't know, Houston maybe.
Oh, this is tough. I think LeBron, wherever he goes, he probably signs another 1-year contract and gives himself leverage. Unless the situation pops up, maybe like Kory said, a Houston situation. But other than that, there's not really a lot of great options where he could really compete with Golden State. I think he'd be better off staying on the Cavs where they've gotten some players that, fit his style. Maybe they can make another move and get somebody if they're lucky. But I think he's probably on Cleveland next year. That's my most likely situation is he's in the Cavaliers uniform.
So I just want to think that he leaves because I think that's more fun. So if he goes to the West, I think the team is Houston. Brett, I agree with you. The Lakers, I don't understand that whole narrative.
No chance.
But here's an interesting out of the box one. If he really wants to stay in the East and stay competitive, and it's not Cleveland, how about Washington?
I mean, they're pretty cap strapped.
I know it's not going to happen, but I mean, yeah, they'd have to figure out a way.
Sixers,
but tell me or the Sixers. But tell me that if he wants to go to Washington in the same way that CP3 wanted to go to Houston. Is Cleveland really going to sit there and not take Otto Porter as a good asset back?
No, you're right.
I mean, I think they're going to take whatever they can get. Yeah, because losing LeBron, they can't lose him for nothing. So I think, they would take whatever they're going to get, but I just don't think Washington.
No, I don't. I just think it's fun. That's why I said it.
Yeah, I'm trying to think maybe like a team. I'm trying to think about a team where he could go to where they'd actually have a chance to beat the Warriors. People have mentioned the Spurs. I don't know how that would fit with Pop. But Houston, I guess, seems like maybe a real possibility. I don't know any team in the East that really
if
has
Houston would have been able to get Melo, I would have guaranteed you that him and Wade go to Houston next year. But it obviously didn't happen, so I don't know.
I think the Clippers are more attractive than the Lakers if he really loves LA that much.
Yeah, the Lakers they're going to be too young. They're just not at that point yet. And even if they do add Paul George, I just don't think they'll have enough pieces on that roster to really compete. So, but League Pass wise, where do you rank the Cavs in League Pass?
They're like a 6 to me just because I question their defensive effort in the regular season. I am very curious to see how Kevin Love plays in the starting lineup at center. But this team just, they just cruise in the regular season. We kind of know what they are. I mean, I'll notch it up to like a 7 or 8 once Isaiah Thomas comes back because that intrigues me a lot more. But to start the season, they're like a 6 to me.
Yeah, I think they're top 5, top 10. I'll put them between 5 and 8. Fred and Austin Carr do it for me, guys. I miss those guys. I miss being in Cleveland listening to Throw the Hammer Down. So, League Pass wise, they're going to be an exciting team to watch. And I actually am excited to see Wade and LeBron play again because I think, like we mentioned before, that could be chaos or it could be beautiful to watch. We'll see.
Yeah, I'm going with a 9. Between having LeBron and all these stars, I think it's going to be fun to watch. Who knows how well it starts off? Who knows how good Wade is with this team? But there's definitely a lot of very good storylines on one roster.
Yeah, I think that's what really helps them. I'm going to give him 8 out of 10. I think storyline-wise, obviously I always like to appreciate a player like LeBron, see how he reacts to losing Kyrie, how Kevin Love fits, needing to do more on offense. Does Dwayne Wade and does Derrick Rose have gas in the tank? Can they help this team really compete against Golden State? I think they're an interesting bunch. you'd watch the Cavaliers over what TV show that you like?
A show that just started last year was a cultural phenomenon, Westworld.
I heard about that. I got to
It
check
is
that out.
excellent. HBO, if you have it. Second season's coming out, I think next year or next spring.
For me, the show would be Game of Thrones, because this is what this is for, especially in Cleveland. This is the game to get back on the Iron Throne for the King and LeBron. Is he the true king, or is he just another pretender? So
And you got the King of the
Thrones-
Floor.
Man, damn. You know, me and Nick have we've had a lot of talks off podcast about would Game of Thrones be brought up on this podcast series, and you were the first one, Brett, to take the shot at GOT. It's not like an indictment though. I mean, the Cavs are a fantastic team.
I'm honored.
He's a LeBron guy. LeBron guy. You got to pick a good show if you're a LeBron guy.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you're
I'm
exchanging
actually
one king for another king, so like you said, it kind of works out.
And I wrote the article
I'm
already,
actually
so I
gonna
might
pick-
as well follow up on it, right?
Yeah.
No, that's a good article actually.
Thank you.
Um,
Appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm actually going with a show that's still on TV, not the Game of Thrones. I'm going to go with The Walking Dead. Shows live, The Walking Dead and Game of Thrones. And this is going to be the first one that I would DVR to see the Cavs play.
It's a good choice, Kory. I'm going to go with a show that isn't currently on. I think they're going to do a third season. Season 1 was probably the best one in my opinion, and that's True Detective. I don't know if you guys ever caught that. It's another HBO show.
Season 1 is definitely the best.
Yeah, that was honestly, I'm not even afraid to admit this. I was really sick. I had the flu. I had just taken some like Dayquil. I was knocked out, like laying on my bed. I binge watched the whole entire season 1 in one day. And it was a great experience. So, especially when you like are on Dayquil, NyQuil, and you're feeling a little loopy, and they're talking about all this weird shit. You're like, damn, this is a real good show. But that wraps it up for the Cavs. A lot of great storylines, like we mentioned, all show. As always, thank you guys for hopping on. Thank you, Brett. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Kory. And as always, thank the listeners.
Absolutely.
It was great, guys. Let's do it again soon.
Yes, sir.
And one more pod left.
Which team? No, I'm just kidding.